Hello and welcome to this training session. My name is Ashraf Ayad and I'll be working with you today on the multi-channel tool that I developed with the help of some of my friends. And the idea behind this tool is to set up all the channels that comes out of Mudbox 2009 and into Maya very easily and very quickly. So let's see how this one works. If we examine our object, we'll notice that it has multiple UV tiles, and it's really important when you building your tiles that you don't have the UV shells, or sometimes they call them the islands, are very close to each other. You need to have some room around the UV shell itself for the pixels to be generated correctly out of Mudbox. Mudbox, I believe it puts 2 pixels as a safe zone, so you need to have at least 2 pixels or more away from each other. That means the UV shells are away from each other at least 2 pixels. So if you have even multiple than 2, I just for the sake of this example I used 2 UV tiles, but you can have more, 5, 6, 10, whatever you have. The idea is that you can generate multiple UV tiles and bring them out of Mudbox 2009 and into Maya. The only challenging part that you will be facing is the setup of these channels and the actual setup of these UV tiles. So with the use of this tool, the idea is that you can bring all these multiple channels really quickly, and just once you hit create, all these channels will be added into Maya and assigned to your surface. A very important thing that you need to do is to go to your preference and under rendering, make sure that you're using the Maya style alpha detection, and that will help preventing all these Boolean effect that you will see when you're adding displacement maps. And also on the note of displacement, it's very important that you realize that the TIFF files that created out of Mudbox 2009, they have a compression that is not supported by Maya, or actually by Mentoray for Maya. So if you are planning to render with Mentoray, you need either to save displacement as EXR, which is 32-bit application, 32-bit file format that will allow you to use the or to benefit from the 32-bit, or you convert these TIFF files out of Photoshop but without the compression. So let's get started with this model. So the only thing I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to select my model and just going to start with the displacement. And here I have my displacement as an EXR file. And you notice here I have the options for texture file, filter, on or off. The reason I added that in because Mentoray had his own filter, so it will be a double filter on the file. So sometimes in some situations I realize that I need to have it off. So you can have that option on or off. By default is on, so leave it on. If this is a floating points, that means it's a 32-bit floating point, so I'm going to use the floating point. So let's just create and close, and you'll see that the shader now has been assigned to that object. Quick examination of why the setup is done the way it is. And you will notice that there's an unorthodox way of connecting this displacement. By working on that exercise while developing this tool, I realized this is the best way to connect it. Just some of the limitations that we have in Maya prevent it to do the normal way, or actually the way that you think should work. But this one, it worked fine. So let's render this. Let's switch to Mentoray really quickly here. Before I even render that, I'm just gonna use a smooth on that object. I'm just gonna smooth it once. I'm not smoothing more than that. So the render is done, and as I said, I only smoothed it once. That original object in Mudbox had 4 divisions in it. So that means I should have divided it 4 times, or I use a Mentoray approximation on it. The objective of this exercise is just to show you how the channels will be connected rather than just to set up the actual displacement. But I'll be using another channel, which is the normal map, to be added on top of that. So I don't really need to subdivide more. I'm going to rely on the normal map to give me that additional displacement or additional look of displacement to be added in with saving the render time. So we have 28 seconds, which is quite fast on my little machine here. So let's just generate that channel one more time. This time we're going to use displacement and normal. Let's move this out of the way. Select my object, go to the multi-channel tool, and we're gonna go grab the displacement. Let's this time just grab the 8-bit channel for displacement. I'm just gonna show you how it's used. If you notice that from the file name that's saved out of Mudbox, you will notice how the actual file naming convention goes. So U1 V1, that goes to the very first UV region. This is -1 and V1. So it shows you which file that goes to which UV tile. The G it's going to be for the alpha gain. So if you need to remember that if you're going to use a low dynamic range image such as 8-bit Targa, this is an unfloat, and the alpha gain for this one will be 15, as we notice from the file name. And I will add a normal map as well. And this is the object tangent space, not object space. Let's create and close, and you will have a new file convention. Sorry, a new shader will be assigned. So quickly, let's have a quick look at it. So here we have the normal map, and you see its tangent space normals. And if we look at one of the files that's 8-bit, you will see in the alpha gain was added as 15, which is the number that we assigned, and for the alpha offset we used the negative half of that value, so -7.5. All the stuff will be added automatically for you. All you have to do now is just to render. Let's keep that image we already did and hit render. So let's have a quick comparison between the last image and this image, and you will see that normal map that's been added give that object that extra look of displacement, and that will also save you on render time. So you don't need to subdivide the object all the way to match the original one from Mudbox if you're going to be adding normal maps to it. Alright, so let's do all the channels. Go to displacement here. Let's get the XR this time. Normal map. The bump map I'm going to be using to define the skin. So I'm just going to be using this one here. These are all the files that got generated out of Mudbox. And the color. And this is the color. Doesn't matter when you pick up the file. Doesn't matter which file you're going to be picking. The MEL script will recognize the files by the name of by their naming convention. So you don't have to pick the first one. Any file will do. So here's a channel that's not really added in Mudbox as an option yet to export files, but you can easily convert the displacement map to an ambient occlusion map in other applications. Hopefully this channel will be added in one of the new releases of Mudbox, so you don't have to do that extra step anymore. So I did that extra step already with additional application to convert a displacement map to an ambient occlusion. Create and close, and you will have a new shader assigned. And if we render that, so here's my final render. As you can see, its render time still very low. I only divided the object once. I have a displacement map, and on top of it there's a normal map that give you that extra look. I use the bump map just for the skin details, and there's the color channel, and on top of that there's an ambient occlusion channel as well. So this way you can set up, or actually with this tool you can set up your files really quickly. The only thing I need to remind you with one more time is when you're using, or the TIFF files that's saved out of Mudbox 2009 will not render correctly if you are using Mentoray. Mentoray will not accept the compression that's on the TIFF file. So you have two options: either use OpenEXR files saved out of Mudbox, or if you already did the work in Mudbox, you can just open that TIFF file in Photoshop, save it out again as maybe another TIFF, but without compression on it. So that was it for this session. Hopefully guys, you can experiment with it and you will have all your files rendered correctly.